everybody. Welcome. We're going to be doing another review for Ghost Train today. We're looking at Assorted Crisis Events, Volume 1. So a couple of things on this one. This is one of these books that, it was late in 2025 that I really started getting back into collecting comics and getting the idea for this channel together. Some of the key books that I had heard so much about, read so much about, that got me back into buying and discussing, comics, being a bit more active, setting up the idea for this channel, but starting with my Affinity Incorporated TikTok, was this one, and Deniz Camp in particular. There was so much hype about him. He's one of those writers I kept seeing being mentioned, and then I started reading his stuff with the Ultimates. Rapidly stood out to me. Then when I found out that it was him, I had to read more. I kept hearing about Assorted Crisis Events. Then when I actually read it, it was just shockingly good. So we wanted to have a little look at the breakdown ahead of the summer's release of Volume 2, which I will be reviewing, of course, when that one is out as well. I am looking at these in collected form. So we'll be doing the first volume today. I'm aware of, obviously, the singles that have come out in the meanwhile since this volume. And the hype continues and grows, and as does, thankfully, the range of types of stories that he's telling in it and the connections with the only honestly connected pieces on this. To get into it, to preface it, what struck me about this book, what made it particularly so good, was very much a level of Alan Moore in the 1982 to 1988 level of energy. I grew up in Dublin, Ireland, mainly in London, UK as well. And so I was there reading the first kind of breakthroughs of Alan Moore for Marvel UK, and specifically like Captain Britain, a lot of the text pieces that Alan did as well, and some of the Star Wars Weekly, Doctor Who Weekly, all the Des Skin Marvel UK stuff that Alan was hired to do. Same time as he did the 2000 AD strips like Halo Jones, DR and Quinch, all the Future Shocks that he did, as well as things like Skiz, all the way up to when he parted with 2000 AD, as well as Marvel UK, and then moving on with Des Skin to Warrior, where he did Marvel Man, now Miracle Man, V for Vendetta, Bo Jeffrey's Saga, a bunch of other stuff, up until the point where he started to really do American work, mainly with DC Comics. So that level of energy of somebody's talent shining through, and just almost the inevitability of somebody finding their way. It's not quite the same, because Camp has had his own complete series, 20th Century Men, a couple of years before, and like I mentioned, on the Ultimates line as well, and a couple of other bits and pieces that he has done. But this series is really coalescing to me a lot of what makes Camp so great, and also paired with some fantastic artistic partners to bring out the best of his vision. And Camp is also one of those people who, like Ram V, like Al Ewing, like Tom King, all very, very different creators, but all brilliant in their own way, but in extremely different areas. And with Camp, the intense humanity and empathy, whilst also wicked sense of humor, but a great sense of structure and timing as well. And the ability to dig deep into a character, and the ability as a storyteller to really kind of lure you in and then snag you with certain pieces, which was always Moore's strength, not just the brilliance of his ideas and the daring of his character choices and plot twists. So let's have a look at Assorted Crisis Event. As I started talking about in the preface, the first few issues reminded me of watching both Moore and Alan Davis Grow during Captain Britain's run that they collaborated on. It's a thrill being able to watch this, being able to be part of the journey and seeing page by page, story by story, their development growing in literal leaps and bounds. With assorted crisis events, the hype was so big, constantly seeing people recommending it on comic talk sites and YouTube or Reddit. And based on the premise of normal people, right? Caught in the current from, as the title says, assorted crisis events. Almost like a cosmic / existential version of the old Marvel series Damage Control. Camp, in his story building, along with the overall designs and art of both the single monthlies and the collected editions, are beautiful and fascinating on a Jonathan Hickman design approach. The whole thing is definitely a complete package, similar to creations coming out of Tiny Onion. James Tynan, Chip Zdarsky does a lot of the same. Kieran Gillen as well. Al Ewing has a certain amount of control over his books at Marvel. But certainly Camp here has very much a unified design sense that holds the whole thing together cohesively and gives it a very unique shape and experience that contributes to the overall kind of wonder of it and the overall worlds that you're being thrust into, and you're being led through, issue by issue or storyline by storyline in the collected pieces. Tom Mueller and Wesley Griffith did an exceptional job with the design on this book. So to the actual issues themselves, from the general displacement of Ashley's life in issue 1, titled Apocalypse Wow, where we almost see a soft launch into the style and themes of the series, through the increasingly meticulous and structurally ambitious Slaughterhouse 9 to 5, through the increasingly meticulous and structurally ambitious Slaughterhouse 9 to 5, where we start to see Camp and his artistic team really start to build up the momentum and get more ambitious and introduce more elements into it as we go through issue by issue and concept by concept. Into the Time Flies storyline, which is very controlled and an objective take on time speeding up as a result of a crisis. So it's like Camp took a list of everything that he had seen in any of the crisis events at DC or any of the big events at Marvel or any of the major ones, but principally, obviously because of the title of it and some of the references mainly aimed at DC, who are most well known for their specific crisis. Crisis on Hearth 2 is probably the first true masterpiece in this volume. The two masterpieces, the last one as well on this, I would mention as well. But for Crisis on Hearth 2, it's sheer storytelling genius. And again, Camp and Zawadzki shift structure to match the demands of the narrative. Something a lot of artists will speak about, in that you have to find the shape of the vehicle or the container that you're using to tell the story, depending on the specific needs of the story. It's never going to be the same if you're really feeling the shape of the story and trying to tell it in a true and valid fashion to get it across in all of its particular resonance and particular little points that are built into it, given your idea. So Crisis on Hearth 2, echoing far beyond the whimsical, clever world, in reflecting the old DC multiverse nomenclature, where we had all the regular heroes since the Silver Age on what was Forever After, called Earth 1, and then you had Earth 2, where the Golden Age superheroes like the Justice Society of America lived. So it goes beyond the nomenclature to hit parallels between modern American political divides the refugee situation, or the old classic populist political trick of dividing a populace or making them turn against themselves, or honestly just making them vote against their better interests, the oldest trick in the capitalist playbook. And the struggle to resist simple answers to complex problems lies at the heart of this story. Ending the first collection here with the stunning and perfect crystal lattice woven story, which to me, again, bringing in more, because this one just screamed to me Alan Moore and John Totlebin's Swamp Thing issue, Loving the Alien. There was an earlier issue that Moore did, Strange Loops, the story that closes out this book about a 13-year-old Anna who is caught in a time loop with an amazingly adaptive, fluid storytelling ending that boils the future down to an optimistic aphorism. Again, it literally spirals us through a multi-layered tale told from her perspective. And some of the art in there is absolutely astounding, and I'll be popping some of it up on screen here beside me just to show you the depth, because there's simply no way to describe it. You have to see it and you have to experience it. So super alluring hook on this book overall, with the title only starting to hint at the possibilities and depths that this series explores. The readability on this book as well, being the only comment I'll make on that one, is you'll need extra time as you will reread most issues with the unusual pacing, the time jumps, the parallel stories, and the physically demanding techniques such as spirals and split viewpoints and color shading. Like I said, I will continue this conversation about this book when volume 2 hits, and we'll go a little bit more in depth in that one. But if you haven't yet given Assorted Crisis Events a chance, my recommendation would be do so as soon as you can, in whatever format you want to. I would recommend starting with the collection of volume 1, but if you want to even start with that and move into the monthlies, you can do so you don't miss one or have to wait. Right now I'm still in a place where I would rather read the collected editions of most of the series I'm collecting or talking about on this channel or wanting to explore. But I've done the monthly thing for years, as a comics fan. And it can be very rewarding, very enjoyable. You're part of a bigger community now with a lot more reach, things like TikTok and like YouTube. But certainly, guys, thank you for watching this. Please reach out with any questions, any suggestions. Always welcome comments. Love to get some constructive feedback, some questions, anything that's on your mind, or just even how you enjoyed these, what you'd like to see more of. Please let me know. Please hit like and subscribe. And we will continue to improve and grow and continue to listen to what everybody has to say. We have a lot of stuff planned for the channel, so hopefully you guys will be along for the ride. But certainly for now, love to hear what you thought of it if you've read Assorted Crisis Events. And if you haven't, love to hear what you think. Come back and let me know when you do get a chance to read it, either issue by issue or a complete collection. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.